Hi, this is Winter. Welcome back to my channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the story. All right, let's continue. Enjoy.
The calm was broken when Peace shouted out that Estefania had called for the master. Estefania stood stunned, convinced that mentioning her name would never summon Sinil. But to her shock, he appeared right before their eyes. His presence was unexpected, and she struggled to understand why he had actually come. Before anyone could gather their thoughts, Magdalena rushed to Sinil, frantic and claiming that Yuchi had tried to use magic on her. Sinil's attention, however, shifted immediately to Estefania. Noticing the bruise on her face, he stepped closer and gently touched it, questioning its origin. Estefania hesitated, torn between honesty and fear. But before she could say anything, Yuchi suddenly spoke up, accusing Magdalena as the one responsible. Estefania was stunned by Yuchi's boldness. Magdalena, caught off guard, tried to deny the accusation, insisting it wasn't intentional, but fear was written all over her face. Sunil's anger was palpable. His expression darkened, and Estefania, sensing an impending storm, scanned the room for help. Yet everyone, Peace, Yuchi, and Ruche, remained passive, unwilling to intervene. Desperate to prevent a disaster, Estefania stepped forward and gently held Sinil's arm, pleading for his attention. With a bright smile masking her worry, she asked him to forget about Magdalena and simply focus on her. Her words were brave, yet inside, she apologized for being selfish. The strategy worked. Magdalena, seething with rage, glared at Estefania before storming out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Relieved, Estefania thought she had managed to calm the situation. But before she could fully relax, Sinil suddenly lifted her into his arms and gently placed her on the couch, leaving everyone around them in complete shock. As the tension settled, Sinil ordered the others to fetch first aid supplies. Peace questioned if there was anything suitable for a no-ma in the castle, and Yuchi suggested checking the basement or storage rooms. Not wanting to go alone, Yuchi dragged Peace along, and Peace invited Ruche to join them as well. Estefania tried to dismiss the need for treatment, claiming her injury would heal on its own, but Sunil simply stared at her with such intensity that she eventually relented, quietly accepting his care. With that, Yuchi cheerfully announced he'd begin the search for supplies and exited the room with the others. Outside, as the three walked down the corridor, Yuchi commented on the astonishing events they had just witnessed. Peace agreed, admitting he once thought the reports about Estefania were exaggerated, but now he was eager to interview her. Yuchi then mentioned Estefania looked pale after her measurements were taken and asked Ruche what had happened. Ruche remained silent. Both Yuchi and Peace gently urged her to treat Estefania with kindness, reminding her that Steffi wasn't a strong child. Ruche, while cryptic, simply replied that whatever happens, Master would take care of it. As they continued down the hall, Peace wondered aloud what Sinil and Estefania were doing at that moment, curiosity bubbling over. Yuchi warned her not to send another bird, though Peace playfully pressed, hinting that Yuchi was just as curious. In the end, both agreed. Whether the two inside realized it or not, something was definitely unfolding between them. The room had grown quiet after Yuchi and the others departed. A strange tension lingered in the air, one Estefania couldn't quite explain. She wondered if it was the calm after the storm that made her feel this way. Her body was heavy, her chest tight with unease. Something didn't feel right, physically or emotionally. She became aware that Sinil was still in the room with her. The realization only added to her restlessness. She attempted to excuse herself, mentioning her fatigue with a faint smile, hoping to retreat quietly. But Sinil didn't leave her be. Without a word of permission, he gently drew her close and guided her head to rest on his lap. There was no room for protest. His presence was overwhelming, commanding yet oddly calming. Estefania gave in, Her words, once hesitant, faded into quiet agreement. I thought it would be improper to rest my head on Sinil Sama's lap, but now that I'm here, I'm grateful. Her thoughts softened. Estefania? Sinil called. Yes? Give me your left hand. She blinked, startled. My left hand? Slowly, she extended it toward him. A gentle glow sparked in his palm. Magic. Estefania gasped. A ring? She quickly sat up and stared at the band now adorning her left hand. It's beautiful. It even resembles Sinil Sama's eyes. It has a defensive spell. Keep it on at all times, he said. Thank you so much, she said, still in awe. Just receiving something to protect me. Somehow, I already feel better. Maybe the stress was really part of what made me sick. A small smile formed on her lips as the warmth of gratitude sank in. Mages. They're more dangerous and freer than I imagined, just like the doctor warned. Central is difficult for people like us to live in. Can you endure it in your condition? She recalled the doctor's voice before she left for the capital. Still, I came prepared. I won't let myself be swept away by the world of mages. I don't have time to lose. I just want to live quietly, thinking of Sinil Sama. She looked at the ring again, eyes full of light. Really, thank you. I'll treasure it. If you understand, then get some more sleep, Sinil said. No, it's all right. Just receiving this gave me energy, she said, sitting upright with a hint of excitement. Actually, there's something I wanted to ask you earlier about the way I handled the situation with the other women. Was that okay? Sinil looked at her calmly. Why wouldn't it be? I'm glad. I was worried he might say I went too far. Understood. Then from now on, I'll do my best. Sinil simply gazed at her, a hint of surprise in his expression. Then, gently, he touched her cheek. Estefania froze. What? What is happening? Try practicing, he said. Show those women how close you are to me. If your efforts are half-hearted, they'll just keep coming. His smile was mischievous. Estefania's thoughts went into a frenzy. What did he just say? Flustered, she looked down. Even if I don't practice, I'll do my best when it matters. So it's fine. Do it, he insisted. Wow, I'd rather avoid unnecessary contact. When she didn't respond, Sinil pulled back. I understand. I'll take my leave then. Wait! Estefania suddenly wrapped her arms around him. I love you. Sinil froze, shocked. Then his expression turned awkward, flustered. Estefania quickly let go, her face red. Please forgive me. A knock on the door abruptly disturbed the quiet. Yuchi's voice came from outside, politely asking permission to enter. Sinil stood from where he sat, and Estefania welcomed Yuchi in. Though he offered to return at a better time, Estefania signaled that it was fine to proceed. Then Sinil left the room. As he entered and settled across from her on the sofa, his eyes were immediately drawn to her hand. His gaze landed on a particular ring on Estefania's left ring finger. Curious and surprised, he remarked on it playfully, hinting at it being an engagement ring. Estefania quickly clarified, flustered, that it was merely a ring Sinil had given her, one that just so happened to fit that finger. But in her mind, she couldn't ignore the implication, especially knowing the customs of this world where engagement rings were typically worn just so. Yuchi, however, seemed unfazed by her explanation, brushing off her insistence that it was a coincidence. He instead praised the gift, noting it must be something incredible if Sinil had given it to her. Estefania admitted that he'd said it was imbued with defensive magic, but she wasn't certain how strong it actually was. Yuchi offered to test it out, and with a plan forming, suggested they head to the training grounds once he finished treating her wound. Their conversation was suddenly cut short by a strange noise coming from outside. Estefania's instincts kicked in. The sound was loud and disturbing. Though Yuchi urged her not to worry, she found it impossible to ignore. Just then, a bird appeared, relaying a message. The explosion had come from the magic item research room. The voice delivering the news was unmistakably Pieces. Calm and precise, he explained that the room was half destroyed. Without hesitation, Yuchi delegated the situation to Peace, explaining that he and Estefania had something else to attend to. Still, he turned to her and asked with a slight grin if she'd come along anyway, knowing full well she couldn't resist getting involved. After the chaos, Yuchi and Estefania entered the room where the explosion was said to have occurred. What greeted them was utter destruction. Gaping holes scattered across the walls and floor, a clear sign that something had gone terribly wrong. Two mages, clearly responsible for the damage, rushed toward Yuchi with anxious faces and trembling voices. They pleaded for forgiveness, explaining that it wasn't intentional. A mistake in their magic item's design had triggered the blast. Tears welled in their eyes as they begged for mercy. These mages were researchers in the castle, experimenting with magical artifacts. But as Estefania observed the damage, she realized, when mages fail, the consequences are far from ordinary. Yuchi approached them with a grin, though his tone remained firm. He reminded them that this wasn't the first time. He'd already warned them before. Magic shouldn't be used recklessly out of pure curiosity. The two apologized again, visibly frightened by what might come next. Yuchi mentioned telling the master, which made them fall to their knees in panic. They begged him not to. The idea of facing the master's wrath frightened them more than anything. Eventually, Yuchi relented. He let them off with a warning, but not without conditions. They were reminded that a Noma, someone without magical power, was now living in the castle. They needed to act with greater caution. Hearing that, the mages turned their eyes toward Estefania. The realization hit them. She was the betrothed one, the master's fiancée. Their eyes lit up with joy and surprise. Estefania understood then. The news had clearly spread throughout the castle. She knew she had to carry herself accordingly. With a bright smile, she introduced herself. Yuchi took the moment to make something clear. If anything ever happened to Estefania, the master would surely come running, and those responsible would face the consequences. As her attendant, Yuchi promised to protect her, though he half-jokingly noted there was already a troubling precedent. He then cast a powerful magic spell, instantly restoring the room to its original state. Estefania watched in awe as everything returned to normal before her eyes. It was, simply put, incredible. With everything back in order, Yuchi signaled it was time to leave. But before they left, he gave the mages one final warning to remember everything he said. They nodded eagerly, full of gratitude and relief. And before parting, they cheerfully called out to Estefania, hopeful to speak with her again another time. After stepping outside, a heavy sigh escaped Yuchi. Estefania noticed his unease and asked what was wrong. He admitted to having a bad premonition, something that didn't sit right with him. Almost on cue, a familiar magic bird sent by Peace reappeared, delivering unsettling news. The southern courtyard was now in chaos. If they didn't act quickly, the entire castle might go up in flames. Yuchi groaned in frustration. Without hesitation, he grabbed Estefania's hand and led her into a sprint, apologizing that there would be no time to test her ring today. The day was far too chaotic. Mages, it seemed, were particularly restless. Estefania, still confused but keeping up, followed Yuchi as he dashed around the castle, putting out metaphorical and literal fires. One problem after another emerged, each more bizarre than the last. It was a side of magic user life that she had never experienced. By the time she returned to her room, exhaustion weighed her down. She couldn't believe how much she'd been dragged around. According to Yuchi, this kind of chaos was normal for magic users, but to her, it felt like complete madness. She had tried to avoid being swept up in Sinel's rhythm, but once again everything had slipped out of her control. Her mind was foggy. There was something she needed to think about, yet her thoughts couldn't land. Her eyes drifted toward the ring in her hand. She had received it from Sinel himself. Life had felt strangely full since that moment. Could staying by his side truly ease her illness? She brushed the thought aside and prepared for bed. But the moment she removed the ring, pain erupted through her body. It wasn't just discomfort. It was as if her very life force was being drained. Every part of her hurt. She instinctively reached out for help, but stopped. Her mind turned to Sunil and Yuchi. Had she relied on them too much? Perhaps she had gotten too carried away. The next morning, Estefania slowly opened her eyes. Her body felt a little lighter than it did the night before, and she was grateful no one had seen her in that vulnerable state. As the memories of what happened resurfaced, her thoughts immediately turned to the ring. Jolting upright, she reached for it in a quiet panic. Carefully inspecting it for damage, she sighed in relief. There wasn't a single scratch. Without hesitation, she slipped it back onto her finger. A sudden wave of ease washed over her, as if her body had been waiting for it. The pain was gone. Reflecting on it, she began to wonder. Had her sudden illness been because she removed the ring? That must be it. Now wasn't the time to test it again. If removing it could bring back that kind of pain, she needed to wait. If they could test the ring today, perhaps she'd finally understand what was really going on. Until then, she resolved not to take it off again. On the training grounds, two mages stood proudly, showing off their powers to one another in a silent battle of strength. Spells sparked in the air, lighting up the heavily fortified arena, one of the few places in the castle where offensive magic was allowed. As Yuchi and Estefania arrived, she was struck by the scene. This was a space built specifically for mages, designed to endure powerful attacks. Yuchi explained that it was the ideal place to test her ring, given how durable the structure was. Their presence didn't go unnoticed. A yellow-haired mage noticed Yuchi and called out, teasingly asking if he was there to spar. But his tone shifted as he spotted the unfamiliar girl beside him. Curiosity spread quickly. The blue-haired mage, intrigued, asked if the girl was perhaps the master's fiancée. Yuchi confirmed it proudly. Yes, this was Estefania. Introductions followed. Estefania greeted them politely, and in return, the pink-haired mage complimented her beauty, expressing how honored they were to meet her. There was a hint of disbelief. Too many had only heard of her, but now they were meeting her in person. Speculation rose. What was the master's betrothed doing in a combat zone? Even if she was with Yuchi, wasn't it dangerous for a non-mage to be there? Yuchi calmly explained. They were there to test a ring. The moment he mentioned it, all eyes turned toward her hand. The yellow-haired mage examined it with awe, quickly realizing the ring's craftsmanship was far beyond ordinary. His question about whether the master had created it was met with Yuchi's playful confirmation. The ring's power, combined with its protective aura, clearly reflected the master's deep affection. The blue-haired mage commented on the master's overprotectiveness, while the pink-haired one noted how strongly his love could be felt through such a gift. With a grin, Yuchi posed a question to the group. Did anyone want to test it? The idea was met with unanimous rejection from the rest of the group. The yellow-haired man adamantly refused, declaring he'd rather die. The blue-haired mage turned away, declining without hesitation. The pink-haired one simply chose to observe and learn, while the blindfolded man silently shook his head. Yuchi had proposed something risky. casting an attack spell directly at Estefania to test the ring's power. Yuchi moved forward with the plan. He called Estefania over and pointed to a corner where he wanted her to stand. Though hesitant and visibly shocked, Estefania agreed, trusting Yuchi's promise that she wouldn't be harmed. She took her position, nerves bubbling beneath her calm expression. Yuchi prepared the spell, signaling that it was about to begin. Estefania steadied herself, ready to face the unknown. The moment the spell was released and approached her, the ring reacted. A protective shield manifested in an instant, not only blocking the attack, but redirecting it with even greater force. The magic rebounded toward Yuchi, who quickly raised his barrier just in time to avoid serious harm. Relieved, Estefania rushed over to check on him. Thankfully, Yuchi was unharmed. He pointed out the ring's incredible power. Anyone who dared to attack Estefania would have their magic reflected at them, stronger than before. Estefania was astonished. The ring wasn't just a charm. It was a formidable safeguard. While she thought its power might be excessive, she was grateful. With this, even if Magdalena tried anything again, she would be safe. Deep in her heart, she made a note to thank Sinil-sama once more. Yuchi reassured her that she didn't need to worry about Magdalena anymore. Whatever punishment was due had likely already been dealt with, just like what happened to Elliot. He joked that Magdalena probably fled the scene in tears. Estefania felt a strange sense of peace, knowing that this time she wasn't defenseless. The day before, Magdalena ran through the corridors in a panic, her heart pounding as she tried to escape the terror Sinil had struck into her. She ducked into an empty room, pressing herself against the wall in an attempt to hide. Fear and disbelief clouded her thoughts. Why should she have to endure something like this? Before she could gather herself, Elliot appeared. He too seemed to share in her misfortune. His missing right arm was a silent testimony to what had happened. When Magdalena noticed, she was horrified, and Elliot made it clear she had his sympathy, not his mockery. He revealed that their master was responsible for his condition, and though he could have repaired it, Yuchi had confiscated the arm. The terms were humiliating. It would only be returned once he had cleaned the entire castle. At the mention of Yuchi's name, Magdalena's expression darkened. Elliot explained further. In the Silver Castle, Yuchi was second only to the master in ability, often acting in his place to keep the mages of Central under control. They had been taught to treat Yuchi's words as the master's own. Magdalena, however, could not accept the situation. Her pride burned at the thought of a country princess stealing the master's attention away from her. Elliot's parting advice was simple. Stay away from that woman. But as he left, the shadows in Magdalena's heart deepened. Her resentment had taken root, and with silent fury, she vowed that her rival's time would come. In the present day, concern stirred among those who had witnessed the events of the previous day. Though Magdalena was an enemy, Estefania could not help but feel a faint trace of worry for her. Sinil's punishment had carried an undeniably dangerous atmosphere, yet Yuchi assured her that Magdalena would be fine. It was, after all, her first time facing such a penalty. The others soon joined in the quiet discussion. The yellow-haired mage, curious about the matter, learned that the talk concerned that idiot's lady, a veiled reference to the Magdalena. The blue-haired mage confirmed Magdalena's name, while the yellow-haired one mused that the master's engagement ring must have been crafted to shield his bride from Magdalena's malice. It now made sense why he had entrusted her with something so powerful, a ring containing the very soul of his magic. The blue-haired mage added that there was no chance Magdalena would remain calm upon hearing of the master's engagement, while the pink-haired mage found the gesture almost painfully romantic. Estefania's gaze drifted to the ring on her own hand. She still could not understand why it affected her physical state, but there was no denying its immense power. She resolved to guard it carefully, all while quietly investigating its mysteries on her own. Yuchi's voice brought the conversation back to Magdalena's fate. Since she had received the master's punishment only yesterday, there was little cause for further concern. The yellow-haired mage asked how many offenses had been committed, to which Yuchi revealed, miraculously, that it was the first. The blue-haired mage explained an unspoken rule. When a mage committed a major mistake, the master would forgive them once. Forgiveness, however, did not mean mercy in its gentlest form. The punishment might not claim a life, but it would break the will of even the most defiant. After such an ordeal, most would never stray again. Magdalena's spirit had been crushed, and the lesson had no doubt been learned. Estefania quietly acknowledged to herself that it would indeed be unbearable if a single mistake were enough to warrant execution. Around her, the others shifted the conversation toward Magdalena's temperament, with a certain pink-haired mage remarking, rather bluntly, that the woman often acted without much thought, and that it might be wise for Estefania to remain cautious. In her mind, Estefania compared this to the version of Magdalena she knew from the novel, a woman so reckless and uncontrollable that imagining her behaving properly was almost absurd. She decided there was no harm in staying alert. The mood shifted when the blindfolded mage reminded the yellow-haired one about an important task. Realization struck, and the yellow-haired mage hurriedly acknowledged that they had nearly forgotten their assignment. Yuchi inquired further, and it was revealed by the blue-haired mage that the group was scheduled for a monster subjugation mission. The four of them began to gather their equipment and prepare, exchanging farewells as they made ready to depart. Yuchi observed that among the mages in the castle, these four were relatively reliable, and assured Estefania that she could depend on them in his absence. She accepted the reassurance, and with that, Yuchi suggested they return. As they walked back together, Estefania found herself recalling something she had once heard, that mages often accepted commissions suited to their specialties. Curious, she asked Yuchi about his forte. He explained that he specialized in appraisal magic, taking on many jobs related to detection and analysis. The term appraisal magic caught her attention, reminding her of the time he had used it on the blood she had coughed up. Yuchi elaborated that this skill allowed him to see things invisible to ordinary mages, down to the smallest details, such as who had planted a particular flower, when it was planted, its exact composition, and even the moment it would wilt. Estefania noted that, despite all being magic, the abilities of mages varied greatly depending on the individual. Yuchi smiled at her insight and mentioned that he had a commission the next day, inviting her to join him. Since she was free until her journey to the north and in need of money, he offered to share part of his pay if she helped. She agreed, mindful of the cover story she was maintaining, and welcomed the opportunity. Pleased, Yuchi confirmed their plan for the following day. Before parting, he remembered another matter to attend to and asked to split ways there. Estefania assured him she would be fine and intended to rest in her room, adding that she still had her protective ring. Satisfied, Yuchi reminded her she could contact him if needed, and the two went their separate ways. Soon after, Yuchi took to the skies on his broom. Elsewhere, far above in another country, Sunil came into view. Observing monster movements, Yuchi addressed his master, noting that he had something important to report. Her betrothed, it seemed, had been hiding something. Yuchi's words triggered a memory in Sunil. Estefania once mentioned that a certain mage had given her the blue bottled recipe medicine that aided his recovery. That alone had convinced him that Estefania was hiding something. When Yuchi realized Sunil had noticed, he expressed mild surprise, then shifted the conversation toward a more personal matter, suggesting that Sunil should spend more time with Estefania. Sunil, puzzled, questioned the reason. Yuchi's playful tone hinted at something deeper, teasing him about being unaware and implying that his actions toward her might not have been entirely conscious. Zinel's serious response cut through the teasing, making Yuchi back off with a joking remark about having much to learn. The tension rose briefly when Sunil asked if Yuchi had a death wish, prompting the latter to make a hasty retreat. As he left, Yuchi reflected privately. Despite the banter, it was clear Sunil had already realized the truth. Estefania was hiding that she was in poor health. That morning, Yuchi recalled the moment he had gone to check on Estefania. He greeted her politely, noting at once that the injury she had sustained was healing well, with little chance of leaving a scar. She apologized for causing him concern, but he reassured her there was no need, shifting instead to ask about the tiredness he saw in her eyes. She admitted she might be feeling worn out after the events of the previous day, though she insisted she was fine, only a little sleepy. Her smile and quiet gratitude for his concern lingered with him. Yuchi thought to himself that, perhaps, it would be fine to entrust the matter to the master. Inside the castle, Estefania returned to her room as she had promised Yuchi. But upon opening the door, a sudden realization struck her. She had forgotten to ask Ruche to keep a certain matter secret. It had already been a day, and there was a chance Ruche had told Peace, yet Yuchi seemed unaware. Holding on to that hope, Estefania hurried toward the corridor where their rooms were located. Before she could reach it, she collided with someone, Magdalena. The timing was unsettling, especially after the events of the previous day. To Estefania's surprise, Magdalena greeted her warmly, explaining that she had been looking for her to apologize. She expressed regret for her harsh words and the injury she had caused, insisting it had been unintentional. She even bowed, asking for forgiveness. Estefania, caught off guard, silently questioned what was happening. Magdalena acknowledged that she truly had feelings for the master, but suggested that if Estefania was to live in the castle, they should be on good terms. She assured Estefania that she would give up her pursuit of him. Still, suspicion filled Estefania's thoughts. Was this genuine remorse or the result of Sinel's punishment? Magdalena continued, noting that Estefania, as the master's newly betrothed, must not yet know him well. She hinted that his appeal went far beyond his appearance and offered, with a sly smile, to help her learn more about him. It was a gesture that carried both promise and hidden intent. In Estefania's mind, the truth became clear. Magdalena's punishment had not been effective. If that was how she intended to play things, Estefania would not simply stand by. She offered a courteous acceptance of Magdalena's apology, assuring her that the cut had not been serious and that it should not trouble her. She remarked that the scar had allowed her to grow closer to Sunil, and for that, she owed Magdalena thanks. To emphasize her point, she displayed the ring on her hand, a gift from Sunil himself. She knew a mage would instantly recognize its nature, and showing it now would serve its purpose. Magdalena was momentarily shocked into silence. Estefania went on to express her disbelief at receiving a jewel the same color as Sinel's eyes, humbly noting that she could never match the time Magdalena had spent with him. She accepted the earlier offer to teach her more about him, acknowledging that there might be sides to Sunil that only another mage could understand. She ended the exchange with a warm gesture, extending her hand in friendship. Magdalena took it, her lips smiling while something darker brewed behind her eyes. The air between them grew heavy, a silent battle of wills hidden beneath polite facades, as the two women's hands clasped in a deceptively cordial shake. After the confrontation, in Estefania's mind, Magdalena's behavior was no surprise. As the only daughter of a noble family from the West, she had been raised like a princess, and the privilege had shaped her into someone exceedingly arrogant. Even after moving to the central region to serve as a mage, her personality, at least in the novel Estefania knew, had remained unchanged, prideful, and unrepentant. Today had been no different. Magdalena showed no signs of remorse, and Estefania decided she would have to inform Yuchi about it later. Her thoughts felt heavy, each one dragging her deeper into exhaustion, until her restless brooding was interrupted by the sudden arrival of Peace and Ruche. From their words, she learned they had been present since Magdalena's suspicious performance began, essentially from the very start. Peace admitted he had been curious to see how Magdalena would react after being punished by the master. The outcome had been unexpected, yet he assured Estefania that if she had been in any danger, he would have stepped in. When Peace asked her opinion about Magdalena's lack of reaction to the punishment, Estefania confessed she wasn't too worried. She had something that gave her reassurance. This revelation startled Peace, who pressed to know when she had received it. She explained it had happened after everyone else had left the room yesterday. Peace, remember, during a moment when he had wanted to return with Yuchi, but was sidetracked by another event worth reporting. Peace responded with a thoughtful pause, then mentioned he would use this opportunity to send out an official notice, not to the entire continent, but only to the mages in Central. Most of them already knew about her recent movements with Yuchi, but he felt it was worth reiterating for her safety. Though she did not fully understand his intentions, Estefania realized it would be pointless to argue. Her thoughts shifted to Ruche and the matter of her scent, something Ruche had mentioned the day before. She asked if Ruche had told any other mage, and the subtle shake of Ruche's head brought a wave of relief. From the novel's account, Ruche was a trustworthy mage, and if bound by secrecy, Senil-sama and the others would remain unaware. Estefania requested that Ruche keep the matter to herself, including from Senil-sama. Ruche's mind flickered to Yuchi's earlier words, urging her to be kind to Estefania, who was not particularly strong, and she silently agreed. Then, unexpectedly, Ruche remarked that Estefania no longer carried the scent of death. The statement startled her, but it was Peace who reacted most sharply, demanding clarification, his surprise evident. Estefania froze for a moment, her thoughts racing. Had he overheard? If Peace knew the truth, he might spread it across the entire continent. But it seemed he had only been amazed, astonished that Ruche, who rarely spoke to anyone but him, had addressed her. When he asked what was said, Estefania was quick to craft an answer. She claimed Ruche had remarked on her pleasant scent, silently hoping Ruche would play along. Satisfied, Peace let the matter drop, and Estefania felt the tension drain from her shoulders. Then came Yuchi's voice, calling for her. She remembered she was supposed to remain in her room and braced herself. When Yuchi reached her, relief showed on his face. At least Estefania was safe. Estefania provided a straightforward explanation for her action, stating that she had only wanted to take a stroll. The conversation took a sudden turn when Peace interjected, revealing that Magdalena had harassed Estefania. Yuchi's expression darkened. One incident, it seemed, had not been enough for Magdalena. Pease noted that Magdalena's mental fortitude was unusually strong, but also praised Estefania for turning the situation around and handling it with confidence. Yuchi, still concerned, warned her not to get too involved with Magdalena. The ring, after all, could protect her from physical harm, but it could do nothing to shield her from the wounds of the heart. Estefania tried to explain herself, apologizing for causing concern. She admitted she had been provoked, Magdalena's way of speaking, as though she alone truly knew Senil-sama, had struck a nerve. Inwardly, she knew Yuchi was right. It was better not to agitate Magdalena, yet hearing her talk like the ultimate authority on him had flipped a switch she couldn't control. The truth was hard to swallow. Magdalena did know the real Senil-sama better. Her connection was grounded in reality, while Estefania's own experiences with him were still shaped largely by the events of the novel. Still, she knew his appeal went far beyond his handsome face, and that was something she had recognized long ago. The thought left her in a cloud of gloom. Yuchi and Peace exchanged a glance, quietly noting the heaviness in her expression. Speaking in hushed tones, so only they could hear, Peace asked bluntly how far things had gone between her and Sinil-sama. Yuchi admitted he didn't know the specifics, only that the master remained unaware. That revelation surprised Peace. How could he not realize, especially given that they were engaged? Yuchi confirmed it was true, almost frighteningly so. Pease deduced from that Estefania must have been the one to propose, and even then, their relationship was only halfway there. Estefania, catching sight of their whispering, wondered what the two of them were plotting. Meanwhile, Peace confided that he believed it was only a matter of time before things progressed, but asked if they should intervene. Yuchi agreed without hesitation. From his perspective, it was going to be a long road. Yuchi called out to Estefania, his tone carrying a sense of resolve. When she responded nervously, he revealed their conclusion. They were founding an association dedicated to supporting her love. Peace immediately declared his participation and even volunteered Ruche. The announcement left Estefania stunned, wondering how events had taken such a bizarre turn. Yuchi began to outline their objectives, but was interrupted when Estefania caught hold of his arm. She denied any romantic feelings, insisting, as she always had, that she admired Sinil-sama only as a fan. Yuchi apologized, saying he regretted forcing her to lie about her feelings and assured her she no longer needed to worry about his earlier words. When she asked what he meant, he reminded her of their first meeting in Central, when he had told her about the burden of constant marriage proposals. Back then, he had spoken for the master's sake, but now the circumstances had changed. He didn't want her to give up on the master because of him. He even told her it was fine to stay after the promised time ended. Estefania repeated that her feelings had nothing to do with what he had said, reaffirming that she truly only admired Sinil-sama from afar and had no intention of staying. Yuchi reacted with disbelief, and Estefania wondered if he wanted her to remain because he had grown fond of her. The thought warmed her, but she knew it changed nothing. Peace, however, seemed perplexed. If she didn't love the master romantically, he questioned, why had she proposed marriage? Was there another motive? Panic flickered in Estefania's mind. If he discovered the truth of the fake engagement, rumors would spread again, and she would have no choice but to leave the castle. Yuchi quickly stepped in, explaining that she simply feared the master would eventually discard her, and that was why she spoke the way she did. Estefania admitted she had never heard words of love directly from Sinil-sama, and that her proposal had been driven by mounting anxiety. This seemed to satisfy Peace, who concluded that this explained the creation of her so-called love support group. Yuchi confirmed it, and Peace acknowledged that even the strongest might feel uneasy when dealing with the master. He apologized for his doubts and pledged his full support, wishing her good luck. Grateful, Estefania thanked him warmly. Inside, she felt relief. Thanks to Yuchi's quick thinking, they had managed to fool Peace. And with that, she realized the group was destined to continue after all. The next day, Yuchi expressed relief that everything had gone well for Estefania the day before. She thanked him sincerely, acknowledging that he had saved her, and confirmed that it would be better not to reveal the truth about the fake engagement. Yuchi agreed, promising not to tell anyone, and noted that such secrets were best kept between as few people as possible. He hinted at a certain topic that might cause complications if discussed further, but when Estefania pressed for details, he dismissed it and redirected the conversation to their next task, a commission from a mage in Central who operated an antique store. He explained that the work involved appraising antiques and organizing the shop, pointing out that even mages sometimes hired other mages for assistance. Magic, he reminded her, was not limitless, and cooperation was often necessary despite personal pride. Soon, he spotted their client. Inside the antique store, Yuchi greeted Finn, who welcomed him warmly and then turned his attention to Estefania, bowing as he introduced himself and noting that it was an honor to meet the master's fiancée. She responded with polite thanks, giving her name. Yuchi mentioned that she had come to assist him, but Finn immediately reacted with alarm, insisting that the master's fiancée should never be made to do such work. Yuchi attempted to reassure him, but Finn refused, declaring that if any harm came to her, he would be the one held accountable and likely suffer the master's wrath. Estefania's thoughts lingered on a peculiar phrase. Yuchi had been given to her. The meaning was unclear, but Yuchi soon explained that Peace had sent another notice to the mages of Central the night before. She wondered if it was connected to yesterday's events and asked what the message contained. Yuchi and Finn exchanged glances before Finn revealed its content. It announced that Yuchi had become her caretaker, a gesture interpreted as proof that the master wished to protect and cherish her above all else. According to this interpretation, any harm toward the master's fiancée, without even the smallest show of kindness, would be met with lethal retribution. Inwardly, Estefania rejected the notion. The truth, she believed, was far more mundane. Sinil had arranged this merely to make her stay in the castle easier, and she felt a pang of guilt for both Sinil and Angelica, whose fates had been altered from the novel's intended course. Finn then remarked that perhaps there was some truth to the rumors, citing the survival of certain reckless individuals as evidence. Still, he warned of the dangers present and suggested she should return with Yuchi immediately. Yuchi countered the suggestion, assuring him that the master had taken proper precautions, and urged Estefania to display the ring she had received from Sinil. She complied, revealing the intricate band. Finn's reaction was immediate and intense. The ring's magical circuitry, he declared, was exquisitely designed, with a flawless calculation formula, so beautiful it was superb. He eagerly begged to hold it, even for a mere second, but Yuchi refused, dismissing him as a magic tool enthusiast and steering him out of the room. Once alone with Estefania, Yuchi asked her to organize the books in the room, assuring her there was nothing dangerous among them. She agreed, deciding to place the volumes neatly on the shelves before arranging them in proper order later. While sorting, her hand brushed against a particularly old and dirty book. It slipped from her grasp, and as she retrieved it, the title caught her eye. Research on YGG's disease. Her breath caught in shock. Estefania's eyes locked on the worn title, Research on YGG's disease. The words struck like a cold blade. YGG's disease. The very illness that was slowly consuming her life. A memory stirred. Before she had ever set foot in this place, she'd spoken to her doctor about her condition. She had mentioned her intent to head for Central, and the doctor, after a pause, had said there was certainly a chance she might find a cure there. Now, standing in the quiet room, she felt a tight knot form in her chest. Could it be possible? Could this book hold the key? Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared to turn the page. The anticipation rose with every breath, only to collapse in an instant. The next page was bare, a pure white emptiness without a single mark of ink. Shock held her still, her mind unable to reconcile the promise of the title with the silence of the page. Estefania froze, staring at the blank page. Everything was pure white. She checked another book, then another, each one the same. Not a single letter remained on any of them. The shock of it left her motionless until Yuchi's voice called her name, pulling her back. He sounded puzzled, and she quickly showed him the book. He, too, was taken aback. She explained that it had already been this way when she opened it. Yuchi examined the page carefully, noting that there was still a faint wavelength of magic lingering on it. That could only mean one thing. It had not originally been these. Somewhere, a mage had stolen the letters from the book entirely, leaving nothing behind but white emptiness. As for why, he admitted he could think of no good reason. The title itself seemed unremarkable. Still, he considered whether appraisal magic might reveal something. Before he could act, Finn entered, stating that it wasn't necessary. He recognized the work immediately. They were the handiwork of the predecessor, Rodolphe Norris, the previous Grand Duke of Central. The name was new to Estefania. He had never appeared in the original work she knew. She asked why the man would do such a thing, especially to so many books. But Finn could only say that Rodolphe had been deeply involved in magical power research during his tenure. The mention of magical power made Yuchi thoughtful. Estefania asked if the previous Grand Duke was still alive. Yuchi confirmed that he was. She then wondered aloud if he was in Central now. At that, Yuchi's tone sharpened. Was she interested in Rodolphe? She admitted she was curious about why he had been removed from his position. Yuchi told her that Rodolphe was not in Central, but where he was could not be revealed. It wasn't Yuchi's place to say. If she truly wished to know, she would have to ask Sunil directly, though there was no guarantee he would answer. Realizing she had pushed too far, Estefania let the matter drop. The atmosphere lightened when Finn interrupted, suggesting they take a break. He had brought tea sweets from his favorite shop. Estefania tried to decline, saying she hadn't done much yet, but Yuchi insisted. If she didn't come, he wasn't interested. The commission was not urgent, so they could afford to relax. He suggested browsing magical tools while they enjoyed their tea, promising it would be fun. Finn agreed, telling her to take home anything she liked. She accepted with a faint smile. They moved ahead with the plan, sharing tea, before wandering among displays of magical items. Among them, Estefania's eyes fell upon a familiar one, the very tool Yuchi had once used to punish Elliot. That Yuchi insists she must try to press the button. Night had settled over the castle, and Estefania sat alone in her bedroom. Her thoughts circled relentlessly around one name, Rodolphe Norris. Somewhere deep within, she felt certain that Mage was the key to uncovering the truth behind YGG's disease. If only he could share the contents of his research. Yet even as she considered it, doubt crept in. What would be the point? There was no guarantee that the answers she sought would yield the result she desired. And even if they did, she feared she had little time left to live. Perhaps it was all a meaningless effort. In the stillness, a voice from within urged her, "Raise your head and show your desires." She searched herself for an answer, and one name surfaced, Sunil. She realized with quiet ache how much she missed him. Then, without warning, her breath caught. Standing before her, as if summoned by her longing, was Sunil himself. His presence filled the room, and he regarded her intently. "Why?" "You called me, right?" Sunil said.
Hi, this is Winter. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Winter Manhwa for more exciting recaps every week. Your support means the world. See you in the next one.